What up, folks? Man, when I get long and it's in the throat, that's the excitement. I am super excited to have you here, man. We had an amazing intro call. I'm not gonna lie, man. You were one of the most attentive listeners I've had in an intro call. And you actually asked me questions. That is so rare in my intro call. So thank you for that. James, welcome to the Mikey G and Web3 podcast. How you doing, brother?
Thank you, dude. Yeah, really good. Really excited to be on here and I'm grateful for that. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, man. And what we'll do here, a couple minutes about myself. And we got a nice little formal introduction for James, and then we'll get straight to it. So about me, we had a great space yesterday with Kevin from Final Bosu. We got our top unfiltered mind space with my lady Mojito is the reason why I know James. So Mojito, Christian, and I, OG Hate Mods, we've started our own space series. Unfortunately, that's kind of a growth exposure thing in this space. I'll still say it, even though I have spaces and I go to multiple spaces. I'm not a huge space fan. But I'm doing it because it's part of the brand that you need if you want to be in Web3. But amazing conversation. Was it interesting to me? I know people really wanted to hear like almost like combative or us really confront Kevin because they had some things delay with their reveal. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this really isn't the space that I'm trying to create. And I think there was a disappointment there. But at the same time, we had a really meaningful conversation. And I think we got there. And I don't know. I don't know if that was right or wrong. But Kev's my boy. He's a beautiful human being. And he's trying his best to build something great. Dyla, I think I said it right. She's a fantastic person. She leads Abstract Angels. She is really helping community with Abstract. Had an awesome conversation with her yesterday. She's going to be coming on next week. And we have many, many, many other guests in the pipeline. So get excited for that. Also, working on yet another podcast that's going to be IRL. Not going to divulge too much about it because we're still working out the details, but I'm excited to do that. We're going to try to do it once a month, and I'll be like in an actual podcast studio. So I'm super pumped to do that, like super professional, formal. I cannot wait to do that. So that's enough about me. The rest is about you, James. And my man, we're going to start off with his just quick formal background. He's really, really focused on the creator economy. He's actually been in it for years on end. A lot of his background. Excited and really trying to bring communities close to creators. And that's what the big thing that Tribe's trying to do. I can't wait to talk about that because obviously that's right down my alley, right? Music streaming company to Series A's and worked with massive brands like Gucci and McLaren. But here is the most interesting part. This dude traversed to Mount Everest Base Camp. Did he go to the summit? No. But I think getting to Mount Everest Base Camp is still kind of a feat. Talk to me about that, buddy. How did I do on your intro? Anything you want to add there?
No, that was great. Thank you.
Absolutely. But tell me, we're going to have to go off a little bit off the cuff. Mount Everest Base Camp. How high is that, and how long does it take you to get there?
It's around about 5,800 meters, which I think is about 16,000 feet. And yeah, it's a week there, a week back. Definitely would recommend it, but obviously super cold, so it's down to -17 on some parts.
Oh my gosh! Real quick, by the way, brother, are you touching your mic or doing something on the desk because I'm getting some type of feedback? It's almost like it sounds like you're hitting the mic a little bit.
Oh, I think I was then. Is that better?
Yeah. We're good. I just want to make sure we didn't do that throughout. I'll let you know if I hear it again. No big deal. Cool. So 5,000 feet, -17 degrees does not sound like an easy feat, but that's one thing I want to ask. Is there anything you learned about that experience? Like, is this like an adversity, toughness thing? being in nature, like anything there? Any insights you can give me?
Totally, yeah. I mean, doing it with strangers. So you spend
Mm,
2 weeks with just a random group of people, and
right.
yeah, the relationships you build with them throughout was amazing. And yeah, even though you think of Everest as like a snowy place,
Yeah.
the route in just evolves continuously as you're going in there. So it starts off super sunny, hot, gets cold, but it's just non-stop, like incredible sights, wild dogs, oxes, all that kind of stuff.
That's so cool, man. Thanks for giving me that little insight. I might have to do that. I have no desire to go to the summit, but I
Yeah,
think I could do 5,000 feet. That would be super cool. I don't think anybody's died just getting to the base camp, right?
no, I don't think so. You'll be good.
Right, right. Awesome. All right. Well, we're here already. And that is the world famous Mikey G and Web3 question. James, how did you get to the seat you're sitting in today? Please give me episode 1, 2, and 3 to reiterate for the audience that will watch this at a later date or not familiar with the format. Episode 1 is your childhood. Here, like I told you right before we came on, I am interested in were you a tinker? Did you play sports? What are your parental figures taught you? Were there any mantras or were there things that kind of seeped through their behavior? Or vivid memories. We'll start there and we'll go off and have a beautiful conversation. Episode 2 is schooling. Did you go to college? Did you like that's what we call it? University is what the rest of the world calls it. Entrepreneurship, like you said and talked about. But here, remember, I'm obviously interested in like the chronological and topical facts, but I'm really interested in these failures and these learning lessons and these insights. One of the things that I told you in the beginning is as we go through this, you're going to share this information and it will fundamentally change lives because they're going to be able to relate to you as a human being. And you're going to give these insights and it's just going to resonate with them and they'll start thinking about things different. It's a beautiful thing that we do here. And then episode 3 is obviously Web3, the creator economy. What are you doing with these crypto communities? I cannot wait to talk about this because, again, like I said, I think we have a lot of synergies. I think this is going to be the beginning of something beautiful, and I cannot wait to hear all about it. So let's start with that childhood, man, wherever you want to go, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first before we start, just want to say again, thank you for having me on.
For sure.
Love the format, by the way, as well. I think what you're doing is really disrupting the content that we see on X. Digging beneath the surface and actually going through those stories behind the project, which I think, yeah, is incredibly like engaging, valuable content that everybody should get to see. So
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
yeah, no worries. So yeah, I mean, I grew up in Nottingham. My dad was a bus driver, my mum a cashier. So not sort of like any sort of flashy lifestyles, very
Mhm.
basic one. And I think that kind of, gave me this attitude from the get-go that if you want something in life, you need to go out there and get it yourself. And
Ooh.
it's not going to sort of come to you. So, yeah, I did that. And then, my grandma used to sort of like often say to me, which is, expect nothing and never be disappointed. And I used to expect everything and always be disappointed. And I think that was sort of like,
That's beautiful, but
mm,
say that to me again because it's early in the morning and I'm in my head. So because
yeah.
that is amazing. Oh, you're already dropping bombs here. Say that again, though. I just want to make sure I process this correctly.
Yeah, expect nothing and never be disappointed. But I did the opposite and expected everything and was always disappointed.
I love that. That is fantastic. Okay, keep on going. Sorry.
Yeah, they're all good. So, yeah, because like we didn't have sort of those kind of things. I always wanted to go out there and get it myself. So I
Mhm.
think that lit sort of that sort of get go attitude within me, and that's what kind of like motivated me to go out there and get the things I wanted. Like I remember in the early days when laptops and mobile phones were the thing, which sounds crazy now talking about
Right,
that. And
right,
like
right.
with a trend then, but I couldn't afford to get one. My family couldn't, so I started car washing on the weekends, like doing extra paper rounds, doing anything I could to save up for one. And I didn't just want like a Windows laptop; I wanted the Mac. And bear in mind in school, I was really sort of challenged in school. So, I couldn't write until about 11 years old. And even like one parents' evening, like my school teacher said to my grandma, like, oh yeah, there's nothing good we can really say about James. He's not engaged. We don't even want to pay for the exam paper for him because it's a waste of money. So I was there sort of like throwing beanbags back and forth with this teacher whilst my whole school was doing their exams. And at the time I was like, well, I really want to prove myself. Like I know I'm more capable than this. And then I went out, made enough money for my laptop, got my laptop, and the first book that I read was Richard Branson's biography. Yeah, great book. And I think what sort of got me through reading that was relating to him on his sort of like academic challenges that he had and how he, turned that into his sort of superpower and went and built all these amazing businesses. And that was kind of like my first crash course into business. So, that's what took me from not being able to read or write from 11 to registering my first company at age 14. Which itself was an experience. I mean, I remember getting home from like a holiday one time and come back and had these letters being summoned to court already because I wasn't filing my tax returns and doing all of the responsibilities that you have as a company. So that was sort of a learning experience. And then I joined the cadets. So I spent most of my sort of weekends either on like an airfield or a shooting range. That taught me a lot of sort of discipline. Started boxing as well, which was really good. And then just sort of like really realized that I have this crazy passion for tech and for learning, despite sort of the initial academic setbacks, becoming like a lifelong learner. And I really started obsessing over, creating companies and learning all about entrepreneurship.
Dude, you gave me enough for 2 days worth of conversations. Thank you so much. I don't even know where to go because there's so much awesome here. Let's start with this. You went from 11 years old, barely being able to write, to 3 years later starting a company. Reflecting back on that time, what was it up to 11 years old? Were there any like inherent like feelings, or was this rebellion? Like what was it that got you to like such a long age of just not wanting to do any of that stuff, right? Because these are fundamental principles that we need to succeed, right? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it's like part of the big problem we have with education system at the minute, which is, education is one of those sectors that hasn't evolved in hundreds of years. It's maintained like the same as like every other sector has evolved like, every decade significantly, whereas education hasn't. And what I find in talking to like, a lot of other entrepreneurs or sort of creative thinkers is that system, where you're taught to recite the same answers in exams and to stick within a box. Like that doesn't work for creative minds or engage any sort of, young sort of ambitious people like that. So, I think it was a mixture of that, like wrong sort of teaching styles, very ADHD and distracted into doing other things, but nothing was really able to capture my attention to go there. Yeah.
And so this brings up one of my favorite topics, which is creativity. So I think you recognize that. Obviously, I actually wrote a post yesterday that got a lot of good engagement. And it was like, hey, here are the common themes that come up in every conversation with entrepreneur. And one of them was creativity. I think creativity is one of the entrepreneur's superpowers and a differentiator, right? There's obviously a lot of copy pasta out there and people are making money doing that. But the true ones that are long lasting understand creativity. When you think about creativity, what does that mean to you? How do you manifest creativity? Because it's obviously started from an early age. You were doing things that you weren't supposed to be doing because you didn't want to do the norm. And that is a part of creativity to me too. So talk to me a little bit about your mindset there, because I think it's beneficial for people.
Yeah, I think creativity stems from curiosity. So, like in order to get creative about something, you got to be curious about it. And then I think, people become creative when they start looking at something in sort of different options or frames of mind and start exploring what it could be, or, what it might be. So for me, like, my creativity doesn't come in the form of, like art or anything like that, but more, I think, problem solving,
Yeah. Yeah.
looking at things through a different lens, like that kind of approach.
Yeah, and I think this is critical for people to understand, and we gotta reiterate this a lot on this podcast. Creativity is not painting or drawing. Like,
Yeah.
and this is another example of the education system is a little wonky, because art class is creativity. And what are you doing in art class? You're building things or painting and drawing, and it's like that is actually a byproduct of creativity. That's a skill, right? Creativity is, how do you think differently to come to a new and novel solution or a new and novel idea? That is creativity. So my question to you is, in this age, reflecting back, are there things that you think you did to help build that muscle, that creativity muscle?
I think, I mean, there's a lot of sort of studies and, what people suggest about, if you're dyslexic, like, for instance, you might read letters back to front. So
Right.
there's almost like a bit of a neurological, like, hard wiring there, which suggests you think differently.
Yeah.
I think the same thing stems from, like, other sort of experiences people have when they're younger. But yeah, I would say it was because I wasn't sort of, consumed with what everybody else was in that age group.
Yeah.
That's what sort of, diverted my attention elsewhere.
And so what were those things when you were younger, right? You're like, I'm not reading or writing. I'm not doing any of this stuff. What were you tinkering with Legos? Were you playing sports? Like, what was that you were kind of curious about?
I mean, always been electronics. Like, I used to buy electronics from the charity shop, take them apart, put them back together. And then same as, like, as soon as I, like, got my computer, I was just hyper focused on exploring all things tech. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. And you bring up a really interesting point, because there's a large percentage of people that come through this podcast that have said exactly the same thing you said, which was, I got electronics, pulled them apart, broke them, put them back together, and made them work. And that again gets back to this heart of creativity of, like, to problem solve. And this is another, I love this topic, and I would love your thoughts on it. To problem solve and get to these new novel ideas, right? You need to understand how things work first.
Yeah.
And that is part of understanding and research. And so, what are your thoughts on just, like, people in general? Do they think deeper? I think I have a personal opinion about this, and just the power of deeper thought. I think it's a great, fascinating conversation.
I think, if you're not involved in, like, the creative space or, entrepreneurial, you're kind of not working that kind of creative mind. Like, if you are stuck in sort of a job where, it's not really requiring that much creativity, you're not training your mind or, exercising your creativity. So I think that's when a lot of people do lose it. But yeah, that's sort of what I've noticed with a few sort of my friends. Whereas, if you're doing a normal sort of Web2 based or, physical job, then you're not being creative and, exercising that creative mind.
Right. I absolutely agree. And part of this is just, I think when people talk about research or thinking deeper, people think that, like, you have to sit here for a days on end and opine about life or whatever the subject is you're interested in. In this day and age, when information is so quick at your fingertips, you can do some, like, deeper research within a half hour, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's this misconception that, like, oh, I'm not going to I don't have time for that. But I think it's critically important. When you think about research and thinking deeper, let's use it for Web3. What are your tools, or what is your thought process or your habits to do your research and think deeper? Because you can do that in many different ways. What is kind of like your style of that?
Depends what I'm doing, but I typically use like a sort of stack of I'll start off with AI, like Grok particularly.
Yeah.
Uh, I will often use the think mode over any of their models on there. And then I do quite like asking it to, once you've come up with your assumption or you're trying to sort of verify something or validate it, if you ask it not to think about it as an AI, but if you ask it to use its social data to actually go find like actual humans on X who are talking about the same problem, I find that gives you an entirely new sort of perspective, and you don't get sort of that same bias that you would get with AI. So I do that a lot, and then I like to question it against like another AI model, like ChatGPT, and would bounce the two between each other.
Dude, beautiful, beautiful insight. And I think this is the other thing that's happening right now. And I really preach this since we're on the AI topic. I just don't think people realize how quickly things are changing, like this day, right? Like the amount of people that are not using AI on a daily basis just to talk to it to understand how it's working is a grave mistake. What are your thoughts about that and what the next year looks like if people are not using this and how it's going to evolve? What are your thoughts there?
I mean, I personally love AI. I don't think we're in this situation where AI is going to replace us. I think instead you may get replaced by somebody using AI. But the ways that I've embraced AI on our workflows with everything has been, it's made a huge difference.
Right. Yeah. And so I think you said that what I think you said is the smart is the realization that AI will replace humans' skill sets, like, I don't know, executive assistants or something like that, like these very prescribed tasks. But to your point, if you do not understand how this stuff works, you will be replaced by somebody that understands how to use AI efficiently and effectively. And that will first happen until we get to more intelligent AI. It's a fascinating conversation. I want to do one thing about your childhood, and then we can kind of evolve on, which is this expect nothing mentality. It seems like your grandma had a big impact on you. When do you think that kind of mindset shifted for you reflecting back? Was this at a young age or did this not come till later? Because that's a huge aha moment to think that like I'm the best, I should be getting everything, and you're just going to be that more disappointed, which he was getting at, right? When if you expect nothing, you can continue to go through failure and adversity. What are your thoughts there reflecting back on like when that switch happened and when it happened, why?
Yeah, I think obviously with the older generation, their sort of approach typically is sort of like, deal with what you've got, like, be happy with it, and that's sort of that. Whereas I think what my sort of frame of mind with that was trying to actually, challenge that and be like, well, your life could be on two trajectories, right? You can either let it play out as it is, or you can put in the work and you can create your own sort of fate with it. I think that was kind of like the turning point at a young age, just wanting to, live a better life and have access to more things.
And so do you think if the reverse was happening and you had everything you thought you wanted, you come out different?
I think you'd be a lot more like complacent,
Mhm.
and maybe you might not value things as much. But yeah, I don't know on that one.
And then the question for me, the last one is you had a lot of environmental factors that kind of molded the mindset that you have, which is you wanted to get the tech stuff and you wanted to work hard because you wanted to change your trajectory and your super creative mindset from an early age. How much of that do you think is inherent to you, like just part of you, versus your surroundings and learned? I think that's always a fascinating conversation as well, too.
I think that's a really tough one. Honestly, don't know the answer.
Oh,
But
I don't think anybody does, but I would love
yeah,
your thoughts. Not anything that I ask, there's no right or wrong answer, right? I'm
yeah,
just because your perspective on how you interpret this, that alone is the interesting part, right?
Totally. Yeah. I think a lot of it is sort of like environmental,
Hmm.
and influence through, what kind of, people you've been around, who you might look up to when you're younger, um, and what kind of experiences you've had, not those siloed on their own, but more just a combination of all those things sort of coming together.
Yeah, I always use I think a lot of it is environmental, but I still do think that people now, whether this is like out the womb, you got it, or it's ingrained over time, like this, right?
Mm.
This podcast and skill set that I've built came a lot from my mother was just over the top charismatic and loved people, was super engaging all the time. So I think that a lot of that was learned. But I also think I just have a natural knack for talking to people, and I have this like inherent thing that I could never explain is I just, like I told you in the beginning, man, I just love people and I love
Yeah.
learning from them. And I love helping them to be able to get to open up like this and like we're doing right now. Uh, Yes, some of that was learned, but I think some of that is just part of who I am as a human being. And then I think that rolls into this whole concept of like self reflection and you understanding a little bit deeper who you are, what you've inherently learned, and what is that in your superpower. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you on that 100%.
And so that for you, what is it? Have you had the self-reflection? Have you been able to nail down what you think your superpower is? And if you haven't, that's okay. I highly urge and recommend to do that because I think it's a very, very critical thing for anybody to do. But it maybe if you even haven't had that deeper thought, what do you think your superpower is currently?
I think it's a really hard one again. I wouldn't say I've had that sort of definitive answer to it or
Totally
moment.
cool.
Yeah, but a lot of it has been, like always within the creator economy. So I feel
Yeah.
like I understand that sort of really well. Applying that sort of mix between, high tech and creative and marketing. So sort of putting those three things together, like any project that I've ever been involved in has always been within those three.
Hmm.
And yeah, I think it's maybe sort of like spotting opportunities and, trying to make things better or, see where things could be better.
No, it makes sense. And so, like, to kind of recap your episode one is I really got the sense of against the grain, right? The evolution from 11 barely being able to write all the way to, starting a business 3 years later. This desire for problem solving and insane curiosity makes total sense with the creative stuff. And in addition to really having this desire to not go down the path of just being, really making your own path. And so these were all beautiful insights, man. You're already doing a fantastic job. And I'm getting to know who you are as a human being. And that's what we're here to do. Let's transition more into kind of the high school. So you're getting this laptop, you're starting to tinker, you're learning that you're just obsessed with technology at this point. Start taking me through that next phase.
Yeah, so launched a few sort of businesses on the side, and then went to university. Obviously, that sort of like disengagement with education kind of continued through college and
Why
uni.
did you go to university? Is this because you felt like you needed to do it?
I think, like, when I talk to people about university, I go, university is great for the life experience,
Yes.
but that's the only value that it really brings to you.
Right.
And I think at the time I was like, new city, sort of like, moving out, like, that's the place, whether it's
Right.
doing the course or not, who sort of knows. And yeah, I moved to university, I think it was like 4 weeks before you're meant to get in. And I found out that, yeah, I hadn't got in. You needed
Oh,
like 300 UCAS points to get in. I think I had like 30.
wow.
So I was like, right, well, yeah, we can't be having this. So I called up the university and asked to speak to the head of course and get him on the phone and go, yeah, you know, I've failed my course. Rather than me talking to you, can I come meet you in person? Where are you? So I go meet him. I explained to him like, look, you know, like business is my passion. I want to study business. I created the first business at 14. I've done all these other things. You know, this was about to be the start of that sort of journey to take me to the next level. And sort of started interviewing me, questioning me. I did like a few exam papers in front of him. And he goes, okay, yeah, you know, I can't let you on the course right now, but what I can do is get you on this foundation course, which is doing mathematical engineering. And after a year of that, you can then come onto the course. So I do that and hated it, like, but I passed it still. And then the first day of getting onto the business course, which I'd built in my head, was like this podium of, you know, sort of like information, you know, gonna learn so much. I very quickly realized that it was all theoretical, like bullshit, basically. And what I wanted was that entrepreneurship, practicality, like how do I create a company? What do I need to do? Not understanding like market structures and economics and all of this kind of sort of nonsense. So started like doing a few things on the side. And at the time I was like selling nightclub tickets as a promoter.
Mm.
And I quickly realized that, you know, when you've got these student accommodations, you have these Facebook groups and students go to them every single year before they move. They use them to communicate. So I started creating all these Facebook groups across the UK for every single student accommodation. And then I would go to these nightclubs and go, yeah, let me sell your tickets and sell them via my Facebook groups. So this was doing like really well. And I was basically like their top seller. And then at the time, Eventbrite was just sort of starting to kick off. So I was like, okay, let's build a mobile app, but the Eventbrite for students, focusing on student night outs. And I entered the enterprise competition, got the grant for it. And, you know, coming into your sort of like, you know, next chapter on the failures and stuff, this was my first sort of like quite abrupt sort of failure. So because I realized that I wasn't getting that on the ground business sort of informational mentorship that I wanted from uni, I went out and tried to find a business mentor. And I came across this guy called Steve, who was the chairman of like their local chamber of commerce, which handles all of the business. And for about 3 months, he was sort of mentoring me to create the business. Like, you know, we did partnerships with all the nightclubs. The only thing missing was to go get money and build the app. And unfortunately, on the day that I was meant to go raise the investment, he was about to pick me up. I get this phone call and it's his number. So I answer it and it's his son in tears going, you know, Steve just had a heart attack on the way
Oh my God.
to come and get you. Yeah, and he's died. And he unfortunately, you know, passed in that very sort of like abrupt, horrible situation. And I had to then stop that kind of business from there. And I met one of his sort of contacts, one of my mutual contacts, and you know, explained the situation to them, and they gave me a job in this call center. And at the call center, you know, I got fired, I think, like in my first week. So I then go back to him and I was like, right, you know, just been fired. Like, you know, do you have any work for me? And that was then when I started saying to him, like, well, you know, what we could do is I can start doing the advertisements for your recruitment agency because you're currently advertising on job boards, and took over that. And then fast forward, I had like, you know, a really lucrative contract and company doing the recruitment, was turning over like 20K a month for that. And then that crashed when GDPR came about. And yeah, it's been a pretty sort of crazy time in uni.
Dude, there was a lot that just happened there. I want to go to this, and it's more of a statement and anything that you need to add on if you want to, which is that you literally started with, there's no chance you're getting into school, but you picked up the phone and said, let me meet you in person and have a conversation. Exactly what we're doing here, right?
Yeah.
I don't think people understand the gravity of human connection and having a conversation, because you never would have even started this journey if you didn't do that. What are your thoughts on, because you even said that too, right? You took an app and then you were kind of disconnected from the socialization part. How important and how has that impacted you of just like the connection, the mentorship? Talk to me a little bit about that.
In what way? Sorry.
Just in general, and how you think it's helped you progress your career, right? Like how what it's meant to you throughout this time.
Massively, like, like huge impacts. I think, business mentors and stuff is something that everybody needs. Like trying to learn theoretically and stumble through it yourself versus going and getting, like practical guidance and support from somebody that's already done it before
Mm-hmm.
makes a world of a difference. And, reaching out and getting those people in person as well really sort of helps you sort of navigate that and grow that. So
Yeah.
that was
And
really
someone that's in that instant that's like terrified to do it, like what's your advice? Is it as simple as just like pick up the phone, or did you have a strategy of making sure you're at least trying to find the right person? What are your thoughts there that someone's like, I know I need to do this, but I'm terrified to do it?
I mean, it can go one or two ways. So like I've had another situation before of where, I've done that and I went and actually raised a personal bank loan for this other startup that I was trying to do. And the guy basically ended up stealing the money. So like he was in control of the business bank account and
Mhm.
he stole the whole lot. And I had to basically stop paying back that personal loan. So you have to be very careful with who you do go to do it with. And definitely make sure like you go into a trusted sort of like well reputation person. But yeah, just like 100% sort of reach out and do it.
Dude, you actually brought up a great insight. I'm glad I asked that question, which is trust and finding the right people, right? You obviously basically got scammed in real life. What do you look for? And do you have a co-founder? I don't remember.
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Okay, so you have a co-founder like this. As an entrepreneur, I'm a firm believer in the power of twos.
yeah,
I have co-founders as well too, and it makes me a better human. But you need to find the right person, and there's adversity going through there. What are the things that you personally have helped you find those right people, or things that you look for as someone else is hearing this conversation and is in this moment in time? What is your advice?
I think firstly stop looking. It's one of those
Mm.
things that you can force. I mean, like, the way that I found Russ as my co-founder on Tribe is, we're involved in the projects that sort of came before it and did sort of the market validation for it. And really, until you start to operate with somebody and, work alongside them, do you actually then sort of like understand how well you're going to work? I think if you start approaching people and be like, let's be co-founders together when we've never really sort of like seen how we react in certain situations or work together, it's very difficult to do that because you have no idea who they really are.
Right. Dude, you just dropped the bomb immediately, which was, and I love this advice. And this actually angle hasn't come much up on this podcast, but very important is especially in Web3 too. I feel people are constantly trying to force things.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you. My co-founder right now that does the strategic side, it was because I was part of a community. Actually, a founder was on this podcast. And so I was able to deeply connect with that human. He knew who I was as a human being. And he made the connection for me and said, you need to talk to this guy because you guys both have like very similar mindsets. And I think you would make great friends. Right.
Yeah.
And that's how it started. That is such great advice to reiterate. Just stop trying to force and stop looking. The best things that you find throughout this. Now, that does not mean don't stop trying to reach out and cultivate relationships, because that's the actual spark, right? And
Yeah.
it really is. And I'll say this, one of the best, well, there's two things that have been produced from this podcast experience that will have fundamentally changed my life. One, as you see here, I've learned how to deeply listen, and I'm really interested in what people are saying. And I'm trying to interpret that information in real time and then ask relevant questions. That is actually true listening. But then two, I've had over 1,000 intro calls, and I have learned so much from people. And it's because of this genuine, authentic connection that I'm just trying to understand people as people. But that information that I've received, I get to go to school every podcast, man. I've already learned a ton from you. And that inherent just connection and learning couldn't be more critical. Those are the things that have impacted me most to grow and kind of the insights I have. What do you think up to this point of your story are the things that like most profoundly impacted you to help you learn and grow? What are your thoughts there?
I think the biggest sort of learning journey that I went on was my last company. So, that was definitely one of the biggest, most valuable learning experiences, and I think just mainly sort of, getting up and doing it again. Like, there's so many times when if you've tried one or two or maybe even three business ideas that haven't took off,
Yeah.
that minute that you make that decision to actually go and try again, that's when you start like reflecting on everything that you did previously. And it's only when you're at that point of frame of mind there that you're going to try again that you actually start looking back and unlocking all of those, sort of bits of insights.
100%. So what I heard there is resilience. Talk to me about one or two things from this last learning journey, whether it is finding the right co-founder, having a solid business plan. What are these things or these deep insights that you got that you could help somebody kind of level up as they're going down this experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, the last sort of company, again, like, wasn't forced, like it literally just ended up happening. There was this celebrity over here in the UK who used to sell video messages. But this was time before Cameo. So it was literally just like a DM on the Facebook page. His wife would answer you, give you a PayPal, and you'd send the money across.
Nice.
Yeah, so we sort of stayed in touch, and she knew that I was doing like social media marketing and that kind of stuff. And she came back to me and said, I'm making 10 grand a month doing this. We want to scale it. Like, I've tried scaling it on ads. How do we do that? And I saw that again as like an opportunity and went, well, okay, so what we'll do is we'll build a platform to do it. I'll take 25%. And instead of it just being you, I'm going to get other celebrities on the platform and I'll run and pay for your ads. So you don't need to pay for your ads. There's no upfront money. I'll provide you with a platform and you just like deliver the videos. So we did that. In the first month went insanely well, like better than we could have ever asked. Like, we did 40 grand turnover in the first month.
Wow.
And yeah, the way I met my accountant through that was literally was calling up accountants going, I need to do all these payment reports. I have no idea how to do it. And he asked me, he was like, tell me about the business. I told him. He asked me for my address, and 2 hours later he came round because he almost like didn't believe it. It was like, how can you have just launched this website which is doing these crazy figures straight off the bat? So when he came round and saw it and sorted all that out, he started saying, you can really raise money on the back of this and take this to the next level. And this is one of the mistakes that I made, which is I, allowed somebody to deviate me from the path that I was on already, because reflection, whilst it was a good attempt to go and raise that money, that's actually what kind of killed it in the first place. Because then I went out and raised money, started off with just being 300K. And the guy who raised money for that company, he sorted the 300K and then he called me back up. He went, okay, I can raise more. I can get some pretty significant people in on this. He's from a music background and he was like, let's pivot this into music. So he ends up calling me back up. He's like, right, raise 1.5 million. I've got you a flat in London. I've got you an office. It's COVID. All my staff are off. I've got a team ready to like jump on this. So let's do it. So the next day, literally just packed my bags, took the dog in the car, drove down to London, moved into this new place and started this whole new business journey. But because I'd given him such a big equity position, and because he'd raised so much cash, and because he was trying to be such a driving force behind the business that he didn't really understand why it was ticking. He was just thinking, throw more cash and people at it, and the thing would just mushroom.
Mm.
That it just took away everything that we were doing right. And, we were never able to get to market after that because he was trying to introduce all these crazy figures. Like, he onboarded some massive music talent like Liam Gallagher, Paul McCartney, and Harry Styles. And because of that, we needed to make sure the tech was tested to this, like, massive mainstream, like, scalability level. And it put all these barriers in place that just meant what was a really good business that started out got killed the second that we raised cash. And
Interesting.
yeah, like when that cash started running out, equity wars and the whole thing just ended up in a horrible liquidation and 3 years of time.
And so doing it different, what I'm hearing is you would have just continued to bootstrap and home grow the solution. Is that it?
That, and then I think like just if you built a product and it's working, you need to have conviction in that, and you need to be disciplined and stick into your roadmap, and you can't be pivoting like all the time throughout the journey.
Interesting. Dude, beautiful insights right there. Absolutely beautiful insights. I think my follow-up question there too is then, but like for me, one of the most critical things is when you have that, like, right, my mission, bringing back the lost art of genuine human connection, to your point, everything that I do tries to achieve that, even if there are times where I'm not making much money or I have an opportunity to make more money, but it deviates from my ultimate goal, right? And so how like actually, and this is more like tangible, tactical, how much does it matter for you to like go through that process and actually write down what it is about so you can share that vision? How important is that to you?
I think massively. I mean, we can get into it more in sort of episode 3, but I think that's what kind of really helped us launch Tribe and get Tribe to where it is today. There was a point where we were going off course with that, and it took us internally to sort of sit down and actually, define and concrete all of that.
Mhm.
And once a team gets it on page with a shared vision, you can feel it in the room. Like suddenly everything makes sense to everybody.
Mhm.
We're excited. We know what we're doing. So I think it's super important that you get that down.
Yeah. And so we'll kind of transition to Tribe here, because believe it or not, we almost been talking for an hour, and I feels like 5 minutes. I want it. Can you share kind of one other insight or failure? We got this, like, don't deviate from the path, but
Hmm.
you talked about so many different things there. Whether it be another insight of like qualities and characters that people you trust, right? You've got this accountant now driving your business vision. Um, were there other founders at play? Maybe leadership, right? What is your thought on leadership? Because I'm assuming you had to manage people then, and you're still relatively younger in the sense of like growing a big company like that. What are any thoughts there?
I mean, that was a massive challenge that I had in the last company, which is, we had quite a high valuation, and, the accountants are in sort of like my business partner's ear being like, you're all paper millionaires, like, valuation on the next round is going to be this. And I think, a lot of their investors were sort of thinking like, are you too young to be driving a company like that?
Mm,
Is it getting too serious? And yeah, I think when you're a young leader, you have a lot of those challenges. But yeah, I think now that obviously I'm, a bit older than since doing that, I've got a lot more experience. I think you can actually use that to be in your advantage. When you're younger, you can put in sort of like that hard effort, lead from the front a little bit more. And yeah, that's what I always just try and do.
right. And so you actually said that there at the end. So it seems like there's some fundamental differences there about leadership when young opposed to experience.
Hmm.
And what I heard was when you're younger, it was more like being in the trenches. That was your like interpretation of leadership.
Yeah.
When you get older, or more experienced, not necessarily age, you understand maybe you need to bring people together as a group more as like that is the more part of leadership and you can actually get more done. Is that what I'm hearing, or do you have a different take?
Yeah, I think it's like kind of like that differentiation in startup leadership and, corporate leadership.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, no, that makes total sense. All right, man. So, again, just tons of great insights. Thank you for sharing your story. You know, really to recap here, I heard a lot about you just evolving as a leader and a person. But the big thing that sticks out here is again, back to this like who are you trusting, staying true to yourself, making sure that vision is front and center everything you do, because especially when you have a good ideas like you have from this vast past that we talked about creativity, it is so easy for either a human or an idea to derail your actual vision. That's a lot of what I heard, and it's literally one of the core themes that comes up time and time again. And this goes to, and I would love your thoughts of how you interpret it. Goes to, I talk to so many founders that tell me what they're doing, but they don't understand the why. Like, what is the problem you're truly trying to solve? How has that mindset helped you out in growing businesses? Is that how you think about it? Or do you have a take on what I just said?
Yeah, I think pretty much on the same page there. So every sort of like company that I've ever done has never been intentional. And I think that's a key part to it, which is, if you want to create a company, you can't really sort of sit there with a notepad and pen and like start coming up with ideas. You need to experience a problem to like come up with a solution to that. And the motivation for it has to always be solely just to solve that problem.
Yes. Yes. No, fantastic. And that is at the heart of what what as an entrepreneur you should be doing. But a lot of times it's like Web3, for instance, right? Oh, there's tons of money. It's a new tech. I'm just going to use it to do something. And
Yeah.
that is the wrong approach. And it happens a majority of the time, which is unfortunate. Let's use this time to reset. We've gone through the first two episodes, man. You've given me amazing insight. I am starting to deeply understand who you are as a human being. I really appreciate you being transparent and sharing all that. People, we've already got many, many insights around leadership, mentorship, how to build companies at a young age. Like, retweet, do all of the things. Come on over to Abstract, by the way, because I would love to engage. You can ask questions. James and I will weave these bad boys in. We already have some comments. Super excited that you guys are engaging already, but it's on X, and I'm not a big fan of that. So come on over to Abstract. Would love to have some conversations with you. With that being said, like you said, that was kind of like towards the end, a good segue into Tribe. And we were talking about like, what is the heart of your mission? So before we get there, tell me a little bit about your crypto Web3 journey. How did you find crypto? Why did you start getting into Web3? And then we'll go into Tribe.
Yeah, sure. So always been like loosely involved in crypto from around about sort of 2017. And after my music business, I went to then consult in a company who worked with large brands, who mainly sort of like celebrities and large brands, creator brands who want to activate in Web3. So I created their sort of Web3 department, ran some activations, integrating those into the communities. And that was when I kind of saw like, okay, because losing a business, after the music thing it's like it's quite a stressful experience afterwards.
Oh, yeah.
Put it lightly, you kind of lose yourself and you need to sort of find yourself again. So I was sort of going through that, and I realized like what I loved the most about crypto is what I loved about the creator economy, which is it's all community focused. And if we forget the trends and the algorithms which come and go, it's still the same thing at the end of the day, which is creator talking to community.
Right.
And it's about those relationships and interactions. So that was kind of like where I decided, yeah, you know, crypto is where I want to be now. On the side, I was trading, and I actually traded this token called Pojak, and it
Never heard
was
of it.
yeah, and it basically dumped. It got rugged, and myself and lots of other people were sort of dumped on. So I thought, well, you know, buy up 5% of supply when it was around about 8K market cap, and I took it over as a CTO lead. And originally, like, you know, the motivation was just to get everybody the money back that they'd lost on it.
Right.
And started running with it. Like, you know, people were glad to see that somebody was coming in to try and bring it back. But at the same time, there was no real catalyst to send it. And there was no real catalyst for it to have any kind of success.
Right.
At the time, the animation meta was ripping across crypto Twitter.
Uh-huh.
Like every single project was dropping an animation and people wanted to watch them. You know, we had projects.
You're talking about like more like thematic trailers and animation, or what
Yeah, like, do you remember sort of around about October, September last year when just every project was doing an animation and they were
Right.
bringing meme coins to life? And
Yes, yes, okay.
yeah, what we'd only seen as a profile picture suddenly
Right.
had this new depth of storytelling, character, and like personality that we'd never interacted or seen with before.
Right.
So I was like, well, you know, the application for kind of what I did in the music world is kind of here. So, you know, you could build a platform and you can allow people to watch and engage with these project videos and short form content. And you could use that as a way for enabling people to discover new tokens and to buy them and join those communities. So we licensed some tech off these guys who'd built the platform but weren't able to get any projects onto it. And when we launched this, within 48 hours, we had 10,000 users.
Wow.
We did partnerships with over 17% of the meme coin market. And the token ripped straight up to like around about 2 million market cap. So we saw that as pretty strong sort of validation within the space. But unfortunately, like, you know, a couple of whales kind of dripped off at that point. So we had like some aggressive sells on the chart.
Yeah.
When this happened, everybody just saw their bags sort of watering down. You know, we took the platform offline and we said, right, you know, we're going to create a company. We're going to build these apps. It's going to take us 6 to 9 months. And a lot of people then just basically started like, you know, collapsing out the token. Unfortunately, it then had a dominoes effect. I only had 5% of supply control, so I couldn't push it up or hold the price.
Yeah.
And and then from that point, decided, well, you know, what do? Do you double down and make it happen, or just sort of move on to the next? And that's when Russ, who was in the token, became my co-founder. We created a company, and we started setting out to build that, but in the mobile app version. But that was when we sort of realized the market opportunity had moved on quite significantly.
Right.
And so, you know, we then tried to turn it into like a trading app, which was enabling communities to build more people into their communities through retail by removing the friction into, you know, jumping through wallets, exchanges, and like dexes.
Right.
Yeah. But then Moonshot came about and saturated that marketplace. And that's what then caused us to do the thinking to come up with Tribe.
Dude. Fantastic insight. Talk to me about just, I want to touch meme coins for a second because I think people just threw money into it because it was hype. What fundamentally is you know, my interpretation is most meme coins are just an empty promise and it's gambling. What is your take on the meme coin market?
I think a large percentage of it is that. I think unfortunately the meme coin market has been overflowing with scammers. who create a very bad rep for it. But I think at its core, the meme coin market is about like cultural movement within crypto. I think that's what your sort of daily Meta and, you know, these other tokens that just sort of do these crazy numbers with, that's what the ones that are successful, which is the ones that tap into that culture. And yeah, I think it's a real shame that the meme coin market is kind of ruined in that regard. But yeah,
do you ever see a version of the meme coin market come back? Because like, you know, you got people like what's his face, Grail, promoting this new bloop or whatever it is, but I start going down the path on that, and it just seems like yet another wrapper around something that's just not lucrative. I mean, lucrative for them, but not lucrative for the overall community. What are your thoughts there?
I think it's 100% broken by design at the minute. You know, even liquidity on tokens just unfortunately force people to either nuke bags or like hold them till they round trip.
Yep.
I don't really see, like, you know, we're obviously going to have some really good projects sort of come out from that. But, you know, I personally don't trade meme coins anymore because they're unfortunately just too full of scams.
Yeah, no, I love that. And so, but again, which is cool, and we've talked about this, and we just had this insight of like, it can't force anything, and you find your co-founder through this, which most people would interpret, and by the way, understand you from the past too, of like why you're like, I'm going to take 5% of the supply and try to revive this thing, because you want to fix things and you want to figure out how things work, but you find your co-founder. So now we're at Tribe. I'm really excited to understand the ethos and the mission. So I'd love to start there. Is what is fundamental? What is Tribe fundamentally trying to solve? What is that problem they're trying to solve, and what do you do?
So Tribe, we believe that you know, hence in the name, every community has got a tribe within it, and that tribe is a core group of followers. You'll have it with your podcast, you know, the people who listen to every single episode, like every single post, you know, your core like tribe who is there for you to support you. And what we think is that, you know, there's this massive sort of surge of crypto content creators who are creating awesome content. They've got their tribe, but they're currently limited in their resources. You know, they're not able to do it full time, or they're not able to push it to the next level. If you've really got a token behind that, like, you know, you don't want to be extractive, and you don't want to be asking them to put more money into the chart, because they might have already done that for you. But what they want is they want to get closer to you. Like, you know, that's at the core of the creator economy. Like, you know, community members just want to get closer to the creator. They want to move from the comment section into the DMs. Like, they want to get personal. And that's what Tribe is about, which is, you know, if you were to cut all the noise out of social media, if you were to cut out all the algorithms and all of the trends, and strip that back down to just a really intimate community creator relationship, that's what Tribe is all about. So it's exclusive content, it's exclusive DMs, and it's a private sort of VIP space for your most loyal following.
Nice. So it's a crypto version of Patreon in an essence. What differentiates you from, because there have been these kind of VIP groups and solutions out there before that still exist today. So what is your thought there? Is it more that you're concentrating on the crypto community, or do you think you have some tech that's new, neat, unique, and novel?
Yeah, we're trying to sort of keep the new stuff away for launch at the minute.
Yeah,
so I can't divulge too much into that. But at its core, like, you know, Patreon was for makers, and Patreon was aimed at those people who might not necessarily have a community, and who are sort of like those, you know, smaller following creators. OnlyFans came in and they sorted out the adult entertainment industry. We've seen X try and do it with X subscriptions, but unfortunately with X subscriptions, you're trying to sell a VIP ticket in like a public queue, because you've got public content and VIP content in the same. And these Telegram groups and Discord communities is a really fragmented, sort of bulky, non-exclusive experience. So that's pretty much what we're here to provide, which is that smooth, slick, exclusive experience built purely for that creator to community.
Yeah, and so you're kind of like, for me as a creator, right? Like thinking about managing yet another thing makes my
Yeah,
head hurt, right?
yeah,
So what I'm hearing is you're helping me as a creator that has a community build an infrastructure to seamlessly interact, and it's not cumbersome or yet another burden on my plate. Does that sound right?
that's it. And the idea is that your community will support you with a very small subscription fee as well, and that subscription fee is going to compound across your following and give you the resources to extend what you're doing, or accelerate any plans that you've got. And it creates this flywheel of you creating more better content, them getting a more personal relationship, and your community growing out from that.
Yeah. I love it, man. So I want to talk about, you've obviously, so how long have you been working on this now?
Since October last year.
Okay. Yeah. So it's been a hot minute. What are some of the challenges of building in Web3? I'd love to hear that. The crypto Web3 space brings a whole nother set of challenges, right? You were building outside of it there for a while. Talk to me about being a Web3 crypto entrepreneur compared to the things you experienced in the past.
I mean, Web3 is very niche focused.
Mhm.
It's a very tight knit, small community as well.
Yeah.
So I think Web3 has obviously got its scalability challenges in terms of how far you can go. I mean, if you look at the creator space within crypto, it's unfortunately, there's a lot of people with botted accounts and
Yep.
fake engagement, fake followers.
Not here, baby. Not here.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, interestingly, how many genuine creators do you think there are in crypto?
I would say a couple hundred.
Yeah, I think that's the same thing there, which is, we only have a couple hundred genuine crypto creators, but look how big of a market crypto is, and look how many participants and the community members there are. Why is there such a shortage of genuine creators? And I think by us introducing this platform, we can hopefully spark those people to become creators, and we can help provide the resources for them to do it and grow that crypto creator economy.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other really fascinating topic here, though, is me being a creator. Talk about this a lot lately. And this is more centered on my brand, as in I deal with the founders in this genuine human connection. But actually, it's for most creators in here. It's for most creators in crypto in the sense that my audience. Thank you. My audience ultimately cares about making a bag. And so if I'm spending all my time creating genuine, authentic content, the true audience is probably on LinkedIn and traditional podcasts like I have. But I just love the space so much. I've never not stopped bringing on crypto founders. But at the same time, in the last couple months, people are sick of getting burned by the same people. Even these huge names that I've just started naming because I don't care anymore. And people are just burnt out, and they're like, you know what? I'm going to call it is for what it is. And I don't care if I'm blacklisted from that cabal because I don't want to be a part of it. And I've seen this fundamental shift, and my brand has really taken a hold probably the last 3 to 4 months, because it's after that whole meme coin craze, that was like kind of the final straw for a lot of people. They're like, I'm just so done being burnt. But my question is, and this is my thought, and are you thinking about this, is until the general sentiment changes about what people are interested in this space, will it open up more creator opportunities? Because right now, if you want to grow as a creator, you should be putting a majority of your content into hyped projects, how to make money, all of these financially driven things. But my integrity and whatnot has just not allowed me to do that. Does that make sense? And are you thinking about how the market is shifting content creation as a whole?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And that's one of the reasons why I love this podcast format so much, is because you're already disrupting that sort of, content recipe that's out there at the minute. Because unfortunately, if you were to go through your X account now, the vast majority of content, as you said, is going to be people shilling pump and dumps, promising tokens are going to hit the moon, and basically just posting with the intention of manipulating. Whereas, with the content that you're doing, which is, deep, genuine human connection, is more along that sort of authentic list of content, which is the exact type of content that we want to push.
Yeah.
Because,
go ahead.
Yeah, after you.
No, but so then my thought is, so there's two things here though. It's awesome that I will have a new easy way to connect with my audience and then monetize, right? But ultimately, my brand, I don't really want to monetize my audience. I just want to give back to them, right?
Yeah.
So, but then my question is, the other main part about this is we all have to play the game too, right? So like vanity metrics still matter, even though it doesn't matter. Like, even though I still run a business with way less vanity metrics, as I actually can get people to like change behavior because of the content, right? Like my value is the content. My value is not a publisher, I'll get you reach. And that sentiment is changing. So, but my question is, I still have to play the game. So are you thinking about how you can help me as a creator through the app, not only engage with my community, but get seen for the audiences that understand what I'm doing and grow my following as well? What are your thoughts on that side of the coin?
Yeah, so discoverability of like creators within the app has been sort of a secondary focus on there. And that's because we think if you're part of a tribe, you're going to know which tribe you belong to already. So you're going to most likely come into the app after being referred by a creator.
Yeah.
But we still do have a discovery section of where, you can find similar creators or creators within a particular sort of category or topic level within crypto.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, but within like, your community. So, the way that they can interact with you right now is probably through a comment section, maybe on your DMs. And
yeah, I have like a genuine builders guild is what I call it. So like I have a really small core community, and they are the lucky ones that can interact, and I give things away and typical things like that.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say, which is like, it's all about taking that interaction further and more personal. And, if you do make any money out of it, like you don't even need to take that as your money. You could use that money for the project. You could give it back to your community, it just gives you the resources to choose what you do with it.
Yeah, love it. And I do think like phase 2, because what we're gonna manifest this when this thing blows, like really blows up, right? You're gonna have a really interesting product in the sense of you're gonna have you're building an app of super fans. And so if you solve this other problem of discoverability, not within the app, with outside. So how can you utilize what you've built on this creator platform and the audiences to help engage them outside of the wall, if that makes sense? And I don't know what the answer is, but I do think that's a huge opportunity in the future and something to think about for sure. Has that even been on the roadmap, or you're just so into making the app work? You haven't tossed those ideas around.
Yeah, like, I mean, one of the ways that like I do it with my group, like quite frequently, is, your group is very good in supporting you on like different socials, like coming into here and, going sort of from platform to platform.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've got a few sort of exciting features for that, which
love it. Yeah, I'm trying to get some information out of you, but you're doing a damn good job to not do it. So I appreciate it. So I would say this. Anything else that you want to talk about the app? I know you can't talk about not the app, but the business before we get into kind of winding it down, man. We've been over an hour already. We'll talk about the future a little bit. I'll ask you one last question I ask every guest, and then I'll say my closing comments and we'll call it a day. But current state tribe. Is there anything else that you want to explain to the people that are watching right now, and that will in the future? Anything else you want to talk about before we get to what you're doing next?
Just really thankful for the support I've had from the community throughout this entire building phase, and yeah, really looking forward to the imminent launch and can't wait to see people using it.
Dude, super pumped. So next 3 to 6 months. Again, I know you're not going to divulge much, but like, do you have a release date that you can share? Any details? And if you don't have any details that you can share, I would love to know what you're thinking about as things you're excited to evolve. Well, like you don't have to divulge information, but you can still talk about what you're excited about in the future.
Yeah, so release on the app stores in the coming weeks.
Nice.
And most excited part is to see which creators we get on board in the platform. Hear the actual like user feedback from community members once they've started using it, and potentially seeing if this has got any application across different creator verticals like gaming, etc.
Yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting to see once you get people in here, like what are those categories that really manifest, because like you said, and this is I will say my last question about the business is, are you treating this as even though it's on the app store, are you still treating this as a more crypto Web3 focused thing? Or is this any creator that is out there, you want to be using the app?
Initially, we're purely focused at crypto, but we will be testing out different verticals in the future. And I think, if you can see all of your favorite creators in one space, then that creates a really unique experience.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Dude, been an amazing conversation. You've shared a lot of insights about who you are as a human being. Last question, I'll give you my final comments and we'll call it a day. We got triple digit people watching us. It's people have really enjoyed it. They've had people engaging, and this content is just going to be great for the future when people are trying to understand who you are. But my last question before we go is, I'd love your thoughts about how you thought today went compared to like we've talked about, the typical things that you see in Web3. Love some feedback, any insights or thoughts.
I think what you're doing is amazing. I haven't seen a podcast format like this in crypto on the creator side. I think everybody else is so surface level with their content, and what you've been doing is amazing. And yeah, I can't wait to see what else you put out there, and really enjoyed today and found it extremely sort of interesting and engaging with the depth of conversation as well.
Thanks, man. That's exactly what I'm going for. If I get that, dude, I'm still batting 100%. And we're over 200 founders at this point. And everyone has felt what my mission is, which is just genuine human connection and real conversation.
Yeah.
That feedback means the world to me. So thank you. And, here are my thoughts, man. I think when we think about successful founders, it is a lot of times, and this is what's failed. We actually were talking about this yesterday. If you look at the most esteemed founders in here that have Harvard degrees or came from Yale or Stanford or whatever, they're some of the most failed entrepreneurs in the space. And what you have and what I love is you just consistently want to solve problems, and you're creative, and that you're going to hit many roadblocks and you're going to continue to go. And I got that throughout. Literally from a young age, you were thinking this way. The insight about how you were barely able to write at the age of 11 was beautiful. And then the fact I really also saw how you used human connection to progress your career. I loved the story about how you just picked up the phone to call the uni and you're like, listen, I can't get in, but I'm going to go talk to somebody, and damn straight I am getting in here because I think this is the next step. Mentorship, the whole insight about mentorship, those things people really need to learn. And then I think my favorite insight of all, and you said it in a unique way. This isn't new, right? But we were talking about founders and how do you cultivate these relationships, and you immediately said, don't try, right? Just do things and this will naturally come. And I think a lot of people force themselves because they hear something from a creator or a conversation like this, and they think they literally take it to say, if I do this, something will happen. But at the end of the day, it's all about trial, failing, learning from that, but honestly, just putting yourself out there in a natural and not superficial way. And you made all of these points and more throughout the conversation. And so I just appreciate the insight, man. And I am really, really looking forward to, like I said, this is the beginning of a friendship. You just gave me an hour and a half of your time. You're insanely busy, and it means the world to me. And we'll cut this thing up and we'll continue to get the message out there. My ask to you is just never stop that creativity, man, because that is absolutely gonna be one of your differentiators. And you remember when we talked about the superpower and you're like, oh, I don't know if I've kind of got there yet. That's absolutely keep on manifesting and nibbling on that like your deep ingrained creativity and curiosity. That is definitely part of your superpower. That might just be it. So thank you for sharing all of that. And thank you, Mojito, when you watch this, for linking us up. And we're going to do some beautiful things. I cannot wait to give you insight. And I can't wait. You definitely got to book the call with my strategy co-founder guy, Bubble, because he will be able to give you some amazing insights. And we're just going to keep on learning and growing together. So thank you so much, man. I appreciate your time.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, Mikey. It's been great.
Absolutely. And with that being said, James and Mikey G started off, by the way, it was early for me. I was up at 6 a.m. We were rocking and rolling. But have a fantastic rest of your, is it Wednesday, by the way? Have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday. Mikey G and James are out.